Yep, folks, Mr. Thrive and Survive has dumped some more stupid onto the YouTubes. This time he's prattling nonsensically about shadows. Specifically, in today's installment, he tries to show that the sun can't produce shadows with a penumbra, even though we all know that it can. Let's find out what boundless insanity has brought him to this conclusion.
Okay, let's look at this ridiculousness one last time in the heliocentric model.
Please, to spare yourself the embarrassment, let this be the last time you attempt this foolishness. Every time you start talking about shadows, all you do is demonstrate that you don't understand basic geometry.
And show unequivocally that this is 100% impossible in their model.
I can assure you that not only is it not impossible, it's expected.
Let's take a look at what they show us all the time, and then we're going to take a look at what can be mathematically proven to make this impossible.
Does this mean that Thrive is going to attempt some math? I doubt it, but if you ever watch any of my videos, you know I'm going to do the math.
So when we look at the lunar eclipse, and all you have to do is Google it, and you're going to see, say, a lunar eclipse diagram. And what you'll end up with is different diagrams, but they pretty much look like this.
With you so far, Rich? They all show the basic principle of what causes a lunar eclipse.
And the fallacy of this happens to be that they are showing a sun which is huge, but not to scale. I'd say they're showing it about 2.5 times the size of the Earth here. And they're showing it extremely close. In fact, the moon is just barely closer than the sun.
That's correct. It's not drawn to scale. If it was, it would be impossible to show clearly the principle behind what causes an eclipse.
In any case, let's look at the fallacy of this and dismiss this for the last time.
I'm eager to find out what fallacy he's talking about. The idea that basic geometry might be wrong is intriguing.
If the flat Earth community were to come out with a diagram like this to show something with the flat Earth, there would literally be dozens of comments below stating you're not showing it to scale. It's a trick you're using because if you do it to scale, you'll see it turns out right. And there would be videos by the professor and Marianne and Simon Dan and others who will never try things themselves to see if they're actually right or wrong.
You're half right. If you get something wrong because you've messed up the scale, this will be pointed out. If you attempt to demonstrate a basic principle which is clear if not drawn to scale, we'll all be fine with it. The problem is, you don't appear to understand the distinction.
But let's get into it and take a look. And look at this. That's what I want you to notice first. And wait till you see the angles that they use. They use the satanic angles even in their stupid diagrams.
Satanic angles? Are you joking? Even if I did believe in Satan, the idea that he has some special angles is laughable. One thing I need to credit you with, Thrivey, is your ability to say the most asinine things without the slightest hint of embarrassment.
So they're showing what I have here as the yellow lines, and that is the sun rays coming from the top of the sun. Why this is wavy and the others are straight, I have no idea. And by the way, if you search science, you'll find out that the photons, whether you think they travel in a wave or not, they will travel in a straight line in space. They don't disperse because there's nothing to disperse. There's no medium.
That's correct. This is analogous to Newton's first law of motion. An object at rest stays at rest, and an object in motion stays at motion with the same speed and in the same direction unless acted on by an unbalanced force. In this case, we're talking about light, and it will continue doing what it's doing unless something causes it to stop doing it.
So whatever angle they come out of the sun, they just go forever until they're interrupted, or until at some distance there is no more energy left.
Not sure what you mean by until there's no energy left. If they don't interact with anything, there's nowhere for the energy to go. I suppose this could begin a discussion about the expansion of the universe, but that gets us a little more off topic.
Now, we have the moon during a lunar eclipse is its normal grayish white self. When it gets into the penumbra, which is this grayer area here, is when it actually either turns black or very close to black. And when the moon gets right to about there, that line, that's when you first start to see a little teeny sliver start to turn darker on the moon. And it usually is pretty dark, close to black.
Wow, you got something right. You really should stop here and avoid the embarrassment that's sure to follow.
And as the moon moves into this, and by the way, in their model, this is pretty accurate, because by the time the moon moves around, they have to have all these angles. And the umbra has to be this thick for it to work, because this is a process that takes quite a bit of time, relatively speaking. Most lunar eclipses are about 6 hours or so in totality, start to finish.
I'm going to stick a pin in this one and get back to it later.
Now, so to produce the umbra, which is this right here, is these wavy lines hitting the outside of the Earth. And of course, they go down then, and it causes a red moon. We're not going to get into the stupid reason why they say it's red, but it's a stupid reason.
In reality, it's the same reason why sunsets are red. Sunlight refracting through the atmosphere. Like you, Rich, I'm not going to get into it here.
And then, but what causes this penumbra?
That's simple. It's caused by the light only being partially blocked by the sun.
Well, the penumbra is caused, we got the first two lines, right? The penumbra is caused by these other lines, which here you're going to see is somewhere between 20 and 25 degrees. And we're going to look at the angle of these two. You're not going to believe it.
Well, it's not actually caused by the lines, it's bounded by the lines. And you're right, I won't believe it.
So this is the way that goes. From the top of the sun, it crisscrosses in front of the Earth, and that causes this penumbra. The others, which don't crisscross, but they happen to strike at the Earth at this angle, cause this umbra, and then it comes out in the penumbra on the other side.
Again, not bad. The umbra and penumbra aren't actually caused by the lines, they're bounded by them, but at this point, that's just splitting hairs.
Now, I'm going to, let me see if I can do this, just a moment. Now what I've done is I have expanded the screen to the right so you can see the angles as I click on these lines right here. Now these lines, what they are, let me find something here so I can show you.
Come on, Rich, you should be taking these things out during editing.
I started out from parallel. So I took a line and I dropped it on like this, top of the sun. And I just moved it out parallel. And I did the same thing at the bottom. So that's about parallel there. And then I applied over here what degree angle. And you ready for this? Watch. I'm going to apply this to it. Minus 6.6 degrees. Watch what happens to that top line. Oh, it matches.
With lines that thick, you can match it with a wide range of angles. Time for me to do this correctly. First, I'll draw a thinner line and note the endpoints. Now I can calculate the angle of the line. This is just the inverse tangent of rise over run, which is, in this case, 7.27 degrees. So much for the so-called satanic angle. Now let's get back to Thrivey.
And this bottom line right here is also, as you can see over here, minus 6.6 degrees, 66.
That's right, it's symmetrical, so the angles will be the same.
Even in their satanic, well, we know it's satanic now, even in their diagrams, they have to use the satanic numbers.
Satanic numbers? You're a joke, Rich. But let's have a closer look at your diagram. Have a close look at the endpoints you've drawn. The line you drew at 6.6 degrees starts below the actual line and ends above it. This means that the actual angle is more than 6.6 degrees. Say around 7.27 degrees?
And it's not done here. Wait till we get to these right here. That's interesting also. And again, I did the same thing with these bluish type of lines here, these aqua colored lines.
What a coincidence. I did too. Let's see where this got you.
I started them out parallel at the top of the sun, parallel at the bottom of the sun, and now I just applied an angle over here. So let's see what angle got me to match their diagram. Let's click on this one here. 23.4 degrees. Does that sound familiar?
At least you got close this time. I got 23.2 degrees. Does this mean they're only almost satanic?
Take 90 and subtract 23.4, because 90 is parallel. You get 66.6. And the top one, of course, it matches.
Of course it matches. The diagram has bilateral symmetry.
Minus 23.4, 66.6 degrees. How about that? Isn't that interesting?
Not even a little.
Now, one other thing I want to point out before we move on here, and I'll put a box here just so you can see it more easily. If angle A, which is where they crisscross, must equal angle C when it comes out the other side.
I'm not sure why you're saying this as though it's some great revelation. This is just the opposite angle theorem. This is one of the most basic and fundamental theorems in geometry.
So it's 23.5 degrees going in and 23.5 degrees going out. I hope that makes sense. So here's graph paper.
Yay, graph paper!
And what I did was I did everything to scale the way they say it is. And every one little block one here is equal to 1 million miles. So let's zoom in and see what I did with the starting point. I have the front of the sun just touching this line right here. So that's the 0 mile mark.
Actually, the center of the sun should be on the line, but since the Earth's orbit is elliptical, that distance varies by a lot more than this, so I'm not going to worry about it.
And then each box represents 5 million miles. So you have 0, 5 million, 10 million, 15. It's not, I didn't do every five. You can figure it out. 20 million, all the way out until we get to 93 million. And by the way, to scale, you wouldn't even see this little line right here at all.
So far so good, Rich. Let's see how you'll screw it up.
Where the thickened line is, because I just wanted to point out where 93 million miles was located, and where this line crosses represents where the Earth is. If you put the actual diameter of the Earth on here, I would have to magnify this probably 5 or 6 more times before we'd even see a little speck.
Gotcha. Little Earth.
So keep that in mind. And because the line is so thin, it's actually positioned in the middle, but when I made it thin enough, as thin as I can make it and still show, it shrunk it down from the top down. So it's just a little off of dead center from where the sun is located, dead center.
Yes, it's a diagram drawn correctly to scale. Get to the point.
Now keep in mind also that a quarter of a million miles is where the moon is. So it would be only 1/4 of the box back from where the Earth intersects this line. So very, 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 very close in this scale. So let's back this out.
Now let's look at the ridiculousness of all of this.
I am definitely looking forward to your ridiculousness.
So I started with one line, this purple line here. You can see it starts at the center of the sun and it proceeds to go to the center of the Earth. Right there. And like I said, this line, the violet line here, the purple line, it's thicker. So imagine if the Earth line was thicker, it would be dead on, you know what, accurate. Now let's take a look. Let me click on this line, and over to the right you can see there's the angle, 0 degrees, which means this is how many degrees off of parallel. Now if you do a Google search, 9 out of 10 results, if you say what angle do sunlight rays strike the Earth, they will say 90 degrees.
That would be because, for most purposes, 90 degrees is close enough. If you're interested, here's the math. The radius of the sun is 432,690 miles, so at 93 million miles away, the angle would be the inverse tangent of 432,690 divided by 93 million. This gives an angle of 0.267 degrees. I'm not sure where you got 0.014 degrees, Rich. Since this is the angle between the center of the sun and its edge, the angle subtended by the sun in the sky would be twice this, or 0.53 degrees.
If you get one that's very detailed, they will give you even more. And if you do the mathematics and you find a site that actually gives you the mathematics, it's about 0.14 degrees off of parallel.
Did you catch that? He said, you can do the math. But he clearly didn't do the math. I did, and I got a number that was quite different than his.
So 89.86 degrees is what the sunlight strikes the Earth at from that distance. And you can use the Pythagorean theorem to figure that out yourself.
No, you wouldn't use Pythagoras for this.
You know, the one part of the triangle is 93 million miles away. And then you can figure the height of the sun, which is 800. Oh, yeah, let me show you the sun. It takes up 80% of the box, as close as I could get it to 80% of the box, because it's 800 some thousand miles in diameter. So this is actually to scale. Now let's see how ridiculous their model is. Now I'm going to apply 1 degree. 1 degree off of parallel.
Rich, you just wrongly stated the angle is 0.14 degrees. Why are you using 1 degree?
And you see it stayed on the sun. It started, because I started the line from the sun, it'll apply that angle. And, oops. Now remember, they need 23.5 degrees in one of them, and 6.6 degrees in the other to make it work.
You know how earlier you were bitching about us pointing out when things need to be done to scale? This is why. You clearly don't understand scale. Since the diagram from earlier wasn't to scale, the angles will be different. The 6.6 degrees, as you called it, would only apply to that diagram. When drawn to scale, you would need to use the actual angle of 0.267 degrees.
And you're going to see this, how ridiculous this is when we take two lines, one from the top part of the sun and one from the bottom part of the sun, or east-west part of the sun, whatever way you want to look at this, one extreme to the other, and we're going to see where they crisscross. So let's apply 6.6 degrees to this.
Let's not just say we did. I could let him continue and let you enjoy watching Rich make a fool of himself, but for brevity, I'll just skip past it.
Now I have two parallel lines, one from the top of the sun, one from the bottom of the sun, or left and right, whatever way, again, you want to look at it. And we're going to run those over parallel. And even parallel, they miss the Earth. The outside part does.
That's right, Rich. Parallel lines don't cross. That's kind of the definition of parallel.
And so those who just loved making fun of me for saying, especially since it's a ball, and up here it would be tilted away from the Earth. When the photons come out, they wouldn't be facing Earth. I said that we would never see the outside part of the disk of the sun, because the rays would, if you do the math and if you do it to scale, they would not hit the Earth. Not from the outside. They would from the middle, probably 2/3 of the sun, but not from the outside.
Don't tell me you think light rays only leave the sun exactly perpendicular to the surface of the sun. You cannot possibly be that dumb. Nobody could. The light leaves the sun in all directions from all points. That's why you see the sun as a disk rather than just a point of light.
But let's just say these are striking the Earth. So the only way we see a full disk is with a local sun, much closer than 93 million miles. Now what we're going to do is we're going to apply these angles. Why don't we go with what they gave us in the diagram? And if you think it's just a coincidence, Rich, that the angles were 6.6 and minus 23.4, which gives you 66.6 degrees from parallel, then I don't know what to say.
I know what to say. You're delusional if you think that angles, or numbers in general, can somehow be evil or satanic. That's complete nonsense. They're just numbers. Besides, I already showed that the angles are different than what you think they are. Once again, Rich goes on to use the angles from the previous not-to-scale diagram and applies them here like an idiot. To at least keep some of his dignity intact, I'll just skip past this part.
So let's just pick 1 degree off. Oh, let's just have a half a degree. Minus 0.5. Because I've had people argue, Rich, even just half a degree is enough. Really? Let's find out.
I doubt anyone has actually said this.
So we have minus 0.5. And this will be positive 0.5. First, let's see where they crisscross. They start to crisscross at about 25 million miles away. And you can see it's a very shallow angle, right?
They actually cross at an angle of 1 degree at about 49.5 million miles away from the sun, but since your diagram isn't perfect, what you've drawn is close enough.
And about 55 million miles away, they start to diverge again. Same angle in as same angle out. And guess what? They don't strike the Earth. They don't strike the Earth.
Nor would I expect them to. Now he bangs on a bit about the moon and draws some random angles. I have no idea what he's talking about. His idiocy is too convoluted for me to understand, so I'll just get past it.
Now let's bring it back down again. They crisscross way out here. Can't produce an umbra penumbra. Just can't do it. Mathematically it doesn't work. Physically it doesn't work. To scale it doesn't work. It just doesn't work, period.
To scale, it doesn't work. How do you know it doesn't work? You have yet to use the correct angle.
This is half a degree. Half a degree.
Yes, it's half a degree. Try using the correct angle of a quarter degree.
Minus 6.6. That was their angle to get the umbra part, right?
Wrong.
So let's look at that one because I don't think we looked at this one directly. Maybe we did. 6.6. Are you kidding me?
You're using the angle from a completely different diagram and expecting it to work. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, so that crisscrosses right. That'll work for the umbra if the moon was entering the Earth. Entering the shadow. See, the Earth. Here's the deal. The Earth would have to be right in here for the shadow to come out like this. The shadow would have to be in here. The Earth would have to be right in here, and the moon right behind it. Then, yes, you could have the moon come in and go down. Folks, we're not even close to that.
Stop using 6.6 degrees. The more you do, the more you demonstrate your complete lack of understanding about how angles work.
And if you want to use, let's use the, because this won't cause it either. This is even, in a way, worse. 0.15. I think that's close enough. 0.15. If you do the math, that's about the most any sun ray can be off from from the sun and still hit the Earth.
Well, you're getting closer. The actual angle, as I showed earlier, is 0.267 degrees. But sure, use 0.15 degrees. That angle will demonstrate an important point.
And as you can see, they don't crisscross at all. That's good. The crisscross is going to happen way, way, way down the line somewhere.
Yes, at 0.15 degrees, the lines will cross somewhere past the Earth. You showed that at 0.5 degrees, the lines cross before reaching the Earth. A logical person would conclude that an angle somewhere between 0.15 and 0.5 degrees would cause the angles to cross at the Earth. 0.267 degrees is between 0.15 and 0.5. You should try that.
No crisscrossing of any of them. So you can't get an umbra penumbra. You can't get it if it doesn't crisscross. And at 93 million miles away, and somebody's going to say, no, it changed it to 0.2. No, okay, that would be in your favor. But if I use 0.2, you'll see, what it does is it just rounds on the screen. You have to point these things out because moronic commenters will think that's wrong. So impossible. Cannot happen in their model.
Quite possible and quite expected. My turn to draw pretty pictures. Here I've drawn the sun at a scale of 1 pixel per 10,000 miles. Down at the other end, 9,300 pixels away, I've drawn the Earth. Technically it should only be about 0.8 pixels wide, but 1 pixel is the smallest that I can draw. Let's see what happens if I draw the lines at the correct angles. For clarity, I'll draw parallel lines. This gives a good idea how big the sun is relative to the Earth. Next, I'll draw lines at the top and bottom converging at 0.27 degrees. Unfortunately, the application I'm using only allows angles to 2 decimal places, so I can't use the exact angle. Using this angle rather than 0.267 degrees should result in the lines converging slightly faster and crossing slightly in front of the Earth. This is exactly what we see. Yes, when the correct angle is used, the lines will cross where we expect them to cross. So, Thrivey, let's hear no more of your nonsense that a penumbra is not possible. Remember earlier when Thrivey said this?
Most lunar eclipses are about 6 hours or so in totality, from start to finish.
I'll work out using the angle calculated earlier how long a lunar eclipse should last. Here we see the Earth-Moon system drawn to scale. If the sun's rays were parallel, the Earth's shadow would go straight back. But we know from earlier calculations that they will diverge at an angle of 0.267 degrees. Using similar calculations, it can be shown that the lines defining the umbra will converge at 2.67 degrees. In this diagram, the inner lines delineating the umbra and the outer lines delineate the penumbra. For present purposes, I'm not interested in the umbra. The parallel lines are more useful. Since I'm only interested in the moon, I'll zoom into it to make the diagram clearer. Since the inner lines are parallel to the Earth, they are 7,918 miles apart. Basic trigonometry can be used to calculate the size of the penumbra. It's just the radius of the moon's orbit, 240,000 miles, multiplied by the sine of the angle 0.267 degrees. From this, the size of the penumbra is calculated to be 1,118 miles. A lunar eclipse begins when the moon first enters the penumbra and ends when the moon exits the penumbra. So the total distance it travels during the eclipse is the diameter of the Earth, 7,918 miles, plus going through the 1,118-mile penumbra twice, plus an additional diameter of the moon, 2,159 miles, to finally get out of the penumbra. Now that I know how far the moon must travel, I need to figure out how fast it's moving. The total distance it travels is 2 pi multiplied by the radius of the orbit. This gives just over 1.5 million miles. The total period of the orbit is 27 days, 7 hours, 43 minutes, or 665.7 hours. Dividing these, I get a speed of 2,300 miles per hour. So dividing distance by speed, I get total time of the eclipse of 5.35 hours. So Thrivey's guess for the time, 6 hours, was reasonably accurate. Also, the time may vary because of the elliptical orbits of the Earth around the Sun and the Moon around the Earth. Well, that's another Mr. Thrive and Survive video debunked. I know it's low-hanging fruit, but I have a full-time job. I don't have time to actually research things. I just debunk the stupid and obvious bullshit. The low-hanging fruit. The Mr. Thrive and Survive hanging fruit. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, click things. If you didn't, click other things. It all looks good on YouTube's algorithm.